Good evening. Tonight, Tunisia. A revolution is underway that might change the face of North Africa and even the Mideast. Does Arab democracy start here? We'll explore the underlying issues and assess the role of WikiLeaks, internet censorship, and social networking in the collapse of Tunisia's tyrannical regime. Later, after our 5 video picks of the week, we'll check out Figment.com, which encourages young people to write sonnets and cell phone novels, and a few will be here to read their work. But we begin with part 2 of our series, The State of the Boroughs. Last week, Brooklyn. Tonight, this place.
Chapter 1. He adored New York City. He idolized it all out of proportion. Make that he romanticized it all out of proportion. Better. To him, no matter what the season was, this was still a town that existed in black and white and pulsated to the great tunes of George Gershwin. Now, let me start this over. Chapter 1. He was too romantic about Manhattan, as he was about everything.
Woody Allen's Manhattan is not everyone's Manhattan, but this is a special place and the most densely populated county in the whole country. On average, 71,000 people in each of its 23 square miles. That multiplies out to 1.6 million Manhattanites, and the population is not growing right now, but it is changing. For the first time since the 1970s, a majority is non-Hispanic white. Yes, there are more Dominicans in Upper Manhattan, but, for example, in Greater Harlem today, fewer than half the residents are African American, and the income disparity is growing. But of course, by so many other measures, Manhattan is better, safer, more prosperous, and creative. But where's the borough headed? With high-rises and big box stores, and its neighborhoods in danger of losing their character? Is the future in the outer boroughs? Here to share his vision of Manhattan's future is its borough president, Scott Stringer. Welcome back to the program.
Good to be here.
And I want to start with a clip of Mayor Bloomberg from the State of the City address today. In this clip, he celebrates New York as an enduring place for attracting creative young people, including entrepreneurs. Let's watch.
The investments we are making create more than infrastructure. They create something you can't see or you can't touch. It's that feeling you get when you come to New York, the feeling that anything is possible in this city, that the future happens here first. This feeling of energy and optimism is why our population is growing and why more young people in particular are moving to our city. Many of them come here in search of jobs, but more and more are coming here to start their own businesses right in New York City. Recently, New York was named the #1 city for young entrepreneurs, and that's a great sign for our future, because as much as we are competing with places like London and Hong Kong for private investment, we're competing with places like Boulder in the Bay Area for those college graduates who will attract investment and power the 21st century economy. And we have a few of them with us on stage today. And just let me mention the companies they've started, and then they can stand up and take a bow. There's ZocDoc, a website that makes it easy to find doctors and dentists in your neighborhood, and named by Crain's the #1 place to work in New York City in 2010. There's Energy Hub, which builds electrical and mechanical systems for NASA's Mars missions. Pixable is a photo management website that was the first company to graduate from the small business incubator we started in 2009. Rent the Runway allows you to rent clothes at a 90% discount, making fashion more affordable. Maybe I could pick up a third pair of shoes. Is that possible, you think? And then there's the social networking site that was started around a kitchen table in the East Village, and that now has more than 5 million users, Foursquare. All of these companies have been started in the past few years by young entrepreneurs. All of them are succeeding, and most importantly, All of them are hiring. So thank you very much. Stand up, Zulu. You should all be prepared.
Mayor Bloomberg from the State of the City address this afternoon. Borough President Stringer, were you there?
I was there.
How do you do?
I think he championed some issues that we all care passionately about. He talked a lot about the rights of immigrants, sustainability, talked about the larger issues that impact not just our city but the country, and I give him continue good grades on those issues. I do think, however, there's issues that I think he has to round out, so to speak, and I think when he talked about pension reform without a real plan to get changes both for city workers but also to talk about how to engage the corporate world in the city for shared sacrifice. I don't think he fully studied the history of the 1970s when labor worked with the real estate industry and the financial industry to produce a result. So I think it makes for good headlines, but I don't think he continues to have an Albany plan. So I think he has to work on that. And in this segment, I think he recognizes what we all recognize, which is New York and Manhattan in particular. You know, this is the magnet. This is where everyone in the world wants to be. Immigrants who flee persecution need and want to be here. Young people from all over the world want to come here and start their businesses, take advantage of our great educational institutions. There is so much energy coming here. But what he doesn't talk about is the entrance fee to the city for people is $1 million apartment, and that cost of living is too high, and that we're not making it easier for people to come here, live here, and stay here. And those issues, I think, have to be addressed both in terms of the fiscal crisis, but also what is our policy? What's the deeper dive? And I think that I've heard this speech in various versions over the years, but I do think we now have to start thinking about a new partnership, our relationship with stakeholders who may have been excluded from the decision-making process in this government, and I think we have to work on that.
But what's the citywide view? I mean, the entrance fee for immigrants, whether they're immigrants from the Middle East and Asia or whether they're immigrants from Iowa and Kansas, it's not really $1 million apartment necessarily, is it? If you go to Bushwick, if you go to Bensonhurst, elsewhere around the city, if you go to the Bronx?
Well, people used to say that about Manhattan. They used to say, well, the Upper East Side is expensive and the West Side, but you can still get an affordable apartment on the Lower East Side or move to the Harlem or Washington Heights community where I was born. And what we're finding out that communities that are successful, people who stayed and fought through the crack epidemic, worked to build a school system and businesses in the neighborhood, do attract great wealth and great development pressure. And so Bushwick may not be $1 million condo today, but as somebody who ran for mayor said, the rent's too damn high, and that we have to start looking at ways to create affordability here. And we also have to make it easier for our small businesses. And you will have young people on the show today who will lead this city in terms of the internet and all different kind of entrepreneurial opportunity. But we have to be more engaged with people in this city, and that's the point I'm making.
Do you think that the mayor or anybody else is exaggerating the fiscal crisis or the incredible pressure of these exploding pensions based on promises that were made long ago and other conditions? He used numbers about how 10 years ago it was, what, 1 point something?
Well, I think.
And today, what, 5 point something in terms of the budget outlay?
Well, let's keep in mind, this is no surprise here. The mayor negotiated all of these collective bargaining agreements, so he knew what he was getting into. So now the question is, he should continue negotiation strategy to figure out, in cooperation with the city workforce, in cooperation with Andrew Cuomo, to bring labor and business together, not just to focus on pension relief, but also we need to look at outsourcing of contracts that are ballooning in places like the Department of Education. We need to look at figuring out how did the City Time project go from a couple of million to a couple of $100 million scandal that's now under federal investigation. How did we get to that point? So I think there's a lot that has to be put on the table. It's not just about pensions. It's about an entire effort to get us out of the fiscal crisis so New York can come back bigger and stronger than ever.
In Manhattan, where you were president, we showed the stat earlier, I cited the stat, that the city is now, the borough is now majority non-Hispanic white for the first time since the 1970s. There are other stats that are relevant to this. The disparity of wealth, and this is citywide from the Fiscal Policy Institute, the wealthiest 1% in New York City has 44% of all the income. That's nearly 4 times the disparity of 30 years ago. Is this something you're concerned about as borough president, or that you can do anything about?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of us have been concerned at quite some time that the city is quickly becoming perhaps a city for the very, very wealthy, with enclaves for the very poor, and nothing for people in between. And in order for us to continue to thrive, to attract people from all over the world, that's our energy source. We're going to have to figure out the balance on both in terms of housing, cost of living, and making sure that middle income working people can stay and thrive here. And I do think that is a big issue. You know, I'll leave it for the people who are experts in demographics to discuss the increased population and where white neighborhoods or black neighborhoods, but most importantly, this is not about black and white or Latino, this is about economics. And while the good news is people with great wealth also want to be here, they want to move to neighborhoods they have not necessarily wanted to live in, I think we can have our cake and eat it too. I think new people can come to neighborhoods. I think upper middle class people can come to communities if we protect the people who may not have made a lot of money or make a lot of money, but their sweat equity have turned some neighborhoods into places where everyone wants to be. So the job of government is to make sure, whether it's through zoning and land use issues or good public policy, how we maintain the mix of our communities. And on the one hand, you look at the Harlem community and you see great wealth and development and the community sort of aspiring to great things, but you also have developers marketing parts of South Harlem as the next Soha. And I don't want us to lose the cultural richness of the Harlem community that we're now working very hard to protect.
One of the things that the mayor said in the speech today was, hearkening back to the 70s, that a mistake they made at that time was not investing in the infrastructure of the city. And so things really fell into disrepair, that even in hard economic times, we need to invest in the infrastructure of the city. I presume you agree with that. And if so, what are your priorities?
Well, I think we do have to invest in our infrastructure. The great mistake in the 70s is everyone threw up their hands and said, we can't make sure that we commit to capital projects because we're not sure of the economy. The biggest problem we've had over the last 10 years is our big ticket items, Moynihan Station, the 2nd Avenue subway. Look at the delays at Ground Zero. That we have not been very good at completing projects. Maybe we have too many in the hopper. Maybe we should pick 2 or 3 and finish those projects as a way of making it clear to people that this is a place that can not only propose big public works projects, but we can actually finish them. Look at...
Can I show you an example?
Yeah, sure.
We have a short video.
And you and I didn't even rehearse this.
No, we did not, but you just happened to bring up one thing that I have at my disposal, which is the 2nd Avenue subway under construction on the Upper East Side. Let's watch this in just a few seconds.
This is the sound that greets residents and workers every morning along 2nd Avenue. Construction teams are operating on all 4 corners of 82nd and 2nd. The drilling and jackhammering pauses only when workers take a lunch break. And during that lunch hour, the streets that should be bustling are eerily quiet.
Now, I think you know that neighborhood because you were living there temporarily while your permanent place was under repair?
Yes. My wife and I, our new apartment on the west side, there was a fire in the building. We were relocated to 83rd and 2nd Avenue, and it was quite an experience. The alarm clock became the drilling in the morning, and the store owners, we were able to see firsthand just how difficult their struggle is. I'm glad to say that this experience has gotten an opportunity for me to work even closer with Jay Walder in the MTA. I'm going to do a lot more. I'm a lot more focused on 2nd Avenue as a priority this year.
Is it worth it, this pain?
It will be worth it, but it doesn't mean we have to sacrifice small businesses. There's no reason why 29 businesses on 2nd Avenue had to close. There's no reason why we can't have better signage, better coordination, understanding that there is an interlinking with Con Edison and other agencies. We need to coordinate that better. I'm happy to say in my conversations with Jay Walder, we're going to work more collaboratively to create that synergy and that energy to make this project successful and get it moving quickly. But I have to tell you, on a personal level, I have the resiliency of the small businesses, the restaurateurs. They do not complain. They do not bemoan their situation. They're working every day to produce a good product. And I learned a lot from their New York toughness.
We just have a minute or two. I don't want to be too premature on 2013, the next time we'll elect a mayor, but I gather you may well be interested, and some stats I saw seem to say that you're the second highest fundraiser right now for campaign donations behind Anthony Weiner. Are you serious about this?
Well, that candidacy may be well into the future. Right now, not making excuses, but we are raising money to be in position to make that decision. You have to have a well-funded campaign to be successful in this city, and I'm working towards that. But I'm spending a lot of time in people's living rooms listening to what they have to say about what the post-Bloomberg era in the city should look like. So I'm very excited about the future, but right now I've got the best job. I represent an amazing borough in a great city. And when you look at that movie Manhattan that I was able to see as a young person, and to realize that I represent the great vibrancy of the center of the universe, it's something I'm very proud of.
So give me a last thought on how you make Manhattan more middle class friendly. Is it new kinds of rent controls, price controls? How do you do it?
I think through a number of initiatives. I mean, first and foremost, we do have to figure out the next form of affordable housing, whether we look at Mitchell-Lama 2, another way of creating a private-public partnership on affordable housing. I also think we have to make it easier for small businesses and young entrepreneurs to be here. It's very easy to talk about creating, an incubator program here or an investment capital program here, but there has to be a more holistic approach. We do have to do more as a city to compete for that small business entrepreneurial spirit that is around other big cities, and we have to be more proactive. And that's why I was very optimistic when Mayor Bloomberg made this a centerpiece of his State of the City address.
All right. Manhattan Borough President Scott Stringer, thanks a lot. And next week in our State of the Borough series, we'll have the Queens Borough President Helen Marshall here. Here are this week's online video picks. Number 1, from the infographic site called Information is Beautiful, an animated data visualization. Get ready for a 1-minute ride through what causes America's debt in numbers and in the right size boxes. Do you play Tetris? They call this Detris. Thank you very much. Budget of the UN. Compare these numbers. $21 billion would save the Amazon rainforest. $726 billion the U.S. defense budget. Interest on U.S. government debt annually, $450 billion. Look at all these numbers in relation to each other. That little thing over there, foreign aid, loss to offshore tax evasion, the black box, $930 billion total credit card debt, $148 billion yearly spent on obesity-related illness. And you think that's a lot. Here's the cost of the credit crisis to the world compared to a little tiny bit of African debt. Oh, did we cause a credit crisis? So that's the debt. Now, what does it mean for the 21st century? According to producer Michael Cartier, nothing less than a reorganization of society. But he thinks it's going to be a reorganization for the better.
Society. In the 1700s, society is organized on the basis of countries. In the 1900s, territories and countries are organized based on their presence on a continent. In this century around the planet, major cities are the capitals. Rupture, 50% of the planet's inhabitants live in cities. 20% of human beings feel they live there in cyberspace. Citizens are no longer passive, they can become active participants in social networks. Economy. In the 1700s, it was developed from a focus on the primary sector natural resources. It was built on local production destined for national markets. In the 1900s, markets developed in secondary sectors, transforming. Profits are everything. Markets are based on distribution networks owned by monopolies. In this century, it may become a model of democracies with market. It will be based on third and fourth sector markets, service and high tech. It will develop around the principles of customization, thus proximity to customers, via millions of interest groups structure. The law of supply to the law of demand. From now on, the consumer will decide.
Michael Cartier on Vimeo with a take on economic history that says citizen-friendly technology is leading us into a new egalitarian golden era. I hope he's right, but I suspect he hasn't seen those income inequality stats, the spike that's been taking place in the 21st century so far. Another thing about this century, Mexicans are crossing the border and some Americans are trying to stop them with an expensive and controversial border fence. Now, the president just stopped construction the other day after $1 billion were spent for a very short distance. Here, perhaps, is one reason why.
Race, but you should definitely do it too. You want just Can we Laura? Yeah. Just Laura?
Okay, give it a try.
You know. You get it?
Yep.
That fence mocking video from Roy P. Germano, who is also behind the award-winning documentary, The Other Side of Immigration. Video pick number 4 this week might be of special interest to those watching their health, Verizon wireless customers now included. It's a video demonstration of the new AliveCore iPhone electrocardiogram system.
Here are the 2 electrodes, which you can use by either holding the device in your hand or by placing it on your chest, and I'll demonstrate both. First thing you do, however, just as you would do with your stethoscope, is take a alcohol swab and clean the device, because as news stories have pointed out, cell phones are a nidus for bacteria, and so you want to clean it off so that you don't transmit germs from one patient to another. So I'm doing that, cleaning off the back and the electrodes. Now, the next thing I do is I activate the iPhone ECG application, and you will see that come up here, and it is showing you the baseline. Now I'm going to grab this by my hands, and we will move it forward. And there you see my ECG, and this is lead 1. So lead 1 is left arm minus right arm, conventional ECG. You can see the P waves, and I'm not holding it very stable. If I was holding it in my lap, it would be a completely clean ECG. Next, I'll show you on my chest. So I take the device, I open up my shirt, and I will now put it so you can see it on my shirt. There we go. And now you'll see a very clean ECG. QRS detector will be detecting the ECG here shortly. It's changing. Now it's identifying the beats, and you can see I am detecting and storing, wirelessly transmitting as well as storing locally, my ECG in real time.
Now you can listen to I've Got Rhythm while seeing if it's true. But iPhone or BlackBerry? Video pick number 5 is from the BBC about a man whose smartphone is on the blink.
I bought something from you last week, and I'm very disappointed.
Oh, yeah? What's the problem?
Yeah, well, my BlackBerry is not working.
What's the matter? Run out of juice?
No, it's completely frozen.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. I'll tell you what. Let's try it on orange.
That's got a few black spots, you see.
Oh, dear, yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Was there anything I can do to get my BlackBerry working?
Well, it could be an application issue. But where do you store that BlackBerry?
Well, it's on my desktop.
Well, you could try using a mouse to drag the BlackBerry to the trash. Then after you've done that, you might want to launch the BlackBerry from the desktop.
Well, I've already tried that a few times. I mean, all it did was mess up Windows.
Well, it might be worth waiting a couple of weeks. They got the latest BlackBerries coming in then.
Well, could you give me a date?
Certainly.
Let me put that date in my diary.
Anything else I can help you with?
Yes. I've also got a problem, to be honest, with my Apple.
Great, and clearly an homage with apologies to Monty Python's Dead Parrot sketch. And those are this week's online video picks.
Tuesday late morning in Tunis city center. Riot police seals off access to the main artery, Bourguiba Avenue, with tear gas.
It has been almost a week since Tunisians drove their president Ben Ali from power. What role did WikiLeaks, internet censorship, and social networking play in their so-called Jasmine Revolution? Is this the beginning of a profound change in North African and Mideast governments, with people demanding jobs, a free press, and some form of democracy? Joining us to discuss events in Tunisia and their influence on the rest of the Arab world are speaker and columnist on Arab and Muslim issues, Mona Eltahawy, Columbia Professor of Arabic Studies, Taoufik Ben-Amor, and via Skype, Juan Cole, University of Michigan historian and author of the widely read Mideast blog, Informed Consent. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Would congratulations be an inappropriate word, Taoufik?
It is appropriate. It is absolutely appropriate. I think there's the mix of excitement and apprehension a bit. I think there's less apprehension now and more excitement as the events are unfolding very quickly.
Mona,
I'm absolutely ecstatic. This is one of the happiest moments of my life. I mean, I never ever imagined, I'm 43 years old, I never ever imagined that in my lifetime I would see an Arab leader toppled by his own people. So this has been unbelievably energizing and exhilarating.
Can it spread to other countries, or is that the wrong question or a premature question?
I think because 5 or 6 weeks ago, if you had asked anybody which Arab leader was least likely to be toppled, they probably would have said Ben Ali, and now he has been toppled. It has basically just knocked down the door to all these ideas that Arabs can't revolt, that it's only Islamists who can lead a revolution. This had nothing to do with Islamists, that it's only the US invading our countries, as in the case of Iraq, that can bring so-called democracy. This is the people themselves who toppled the dictator, so it absolutely can be duplicated.
And it's peaceful. Juan Cole, do you want to rein on this party or join it?
Well, I think it's a wonderful development for Tunisia. I'm a little skeptical about the prospect of it spreading in exactly the same way in other Arab countries. Tunisia was unique in many ways. It is not an oil state. The government didn't have this extra cash of money with which to buy people off. And moreover, the extremeness of the nepotism, the narrowness of the elite, the way in which the Ben Ali and Trabulsi clans of the First Lady's family was the Trabulsis, they monopolized a lot of the economic assets of Tunisia. And of course, there are other kleptocracies in the Middle East, but the Ben Ali regime really took this to an extreme, so that it really was cutting out a lot of the rest of the elite from participation in these goods. And then the army didn't side with Ben Ali against his people ultimately. And I'm not sure, in Jordan that the army would ever side with the majority Palestinians against the ruling family.
Taoufik, is it relevant that there is not a lot of ethnic and religious division in the country? Would it be accurate to say there isn't a lot of ethnic or religious diversity in the country as compared to, say, Jordan, where Juan just mentioned the majority Palestinian population.
It is true, but I think I would like to emphasize also the similarities between Tunisia and other Arab countries. The truth of the matter is the tactics of a dictatorship are very, very similar regardless of these governments. They tend to have small armies, but a very large security force. Total muffling of the media, rights of expression, people are in prison, no opposition in the country. I think that Ben Ali is very similar in many ways to a lot of these Arab leaders. I think the issue probably with monarchies is a little bit different, for other reasons. We've seen that people who came out in Jordan stood in front of the parliament and demanded that the government with its prime minister leave. But they didn't say anything about the king or his family.
Mona, is this about jobs because there's such an economic element to this protest, or is this about democracy, or can we separate the two?
It started off about jobs because it was essentially this young man called Mohammed Bouazizi, 26 years old with a university degree, who was selling produce without a license, who self-immolated when the police confiscated his produce cart. So it started off as the frustrations of young people who could not find meaningful jobs or jobs at all. But it quickly took on various aspects. So it became about police brutality. It became about corruption. It became about a regime that as Taoufik said, muffled any kind of expression. So it became about the regime itself. And these are frustrations that you can spread across the entire region because the Arab world is essentially a very youthful part of the world. The majority of Arabs are younger than 30. And the majority of all their leaders actually are much, much older than them. They've known no other leaders than these leaders. So unemployment plus this other very toxic combustible mix is a problem that plagues every country in the region.
Can you talk, Taoufik, about the nature of the corruption for our audience, overwhelmingly non-Tunisian, that isn't familiar with the country? I mean, we talk about corruption in New Jersey, we talk about corruption here and there and here and there. What was Tunisian corruption under this family?
It was phenomenal. I mean, I have a lot of anecdotes, to mention. Like every time I went back to visit the country, and I go there once or twice a year, I would see a new company. Like, for example, 4 years ago, I saw this new gas station chain with a different color, not having the logo of any of the major oil companies that we know. And I said, whose is this? And they said, of course, it's the Trabilsi family. The Trabilsi family are the family of the ex-first lady, the first lady, that was ousted together with the president.
And she had a terrible reputation. She was hated. She was seen as completely materialistic and taking people's stuff.
Right, and it's really taken people's stuff. It's not that things were done in any subtle way. People know actually of all of these events, and this brings another point that I wanted to mention. People do talk. I mean, in a society where oppression is really strong and the regime is not allowing any form of expression through the media and through, people do talk. That's what they talk about. They talk about politics. They make jokes. There are daily jokes about, presidents, from the region, etc. So people were talking about the extent of the corruption. People knew who owned what. And we've seen as an evidence actually from some of the attacks on some of the homes that they knew even where the houses of, the Trabilsi family were or the family of the president were. And they specifically attacked those. The family strangled the country. And a lot of people are actually claiming that it's a big portion of the economy.
So Juan Cole, did the United States prop this country up? Americans started to hear about this if they were paying very close attention to the WikiLeaks story a few months ago, because some of those State Department cables from the U.S. Embassy in Tunis were coming back saying a lot of what Taoufik was just saying. This regime is terrible. They don't have the support of the people. If you own a good piece of property in the real estate boom times there in 2008, it was either going to make you wealthy or the government was going to come and take it from you because they felt like it. That kind of stuff was in the WikiLeaks cables. So was the United States government propping them up in any way like we prop up some other Arab autocracies?
Well, the cable traffic revealed by WikiLeaks, and there have been more and even more damning cables coming out in the past few days, show two things. First of all, that the United States knew exactly what was going on and detailed many of these things that Taoufik was talking about back to Washington. And second of all, that the U.S. backed Ben Ali to the hilt. His government was supplied with monies for quote unquote counterterrorism. This little police state was seen as a kind of rampart against Al-Qaeda in North Africa, the soft underbelly of Europe. And of course, the United States probably wasn't the lead player in all this. France was, and we know what the French thought about Ben Ali. They loved him, they gave him money, they gave him support, and openly the French defense minister offered to send French troops to help put down this uprising on behalf of Ben Ali, for which she's taking a lot of heat now. So this regime played on the tropes of the war on terror after 9/11 to get a free pass for this extreme corruption.
So Tunisia, Mona, is a small country in North Africa. Libya, much larger, is right there on one side. Algeria, much larger on the other side, and they all border the Mediterranean. Is there going to be international pressure against Tunisia ending this process with a real democracy? Because these leaders, and including Egypt, are going to be afraid that it's going to spread?
You can be sure that every Arab leader has been watching Tunisia with a great deal of fear, and we heard this fear at an Arab summit earlier today to discuss the economy of the region, in which Arab League Secretary General Amr Moussa, who used to be Egypt's foreign minister, said the Arab soul is broken by unemployment, poverty and recession. My question, of course, is where have you been for the past 25 years? You've known this all along.
And where was lack of democracy in that statement?
Absolutely, right? But he tried to connect all those things to Tunisia, and it's not just about the economy, it's about, as I said, corruption, police brutality, all those things. Interestingly, the day after the Tunisian revolution, when Ben Ali ran away, Gaddafi, Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, who's right next door, as you said, gave this speech to Tunisians in which he just wanted to remind them of the chaos they had brought upon themselves, because, as he said, Ben Ali was the best leader for them and he should have been leader for life. This was essentially Gaddafi telling Tunisians, I am scared witless by what you did, because we've heard of protests in Libya breaking out, and we've heard about them through social media, and the Libyans have been shutting down these sites, but they're coming through on YouTube. So you can bet that Arab regimes are either hoping it fails or want to support it failing, but every Arab citizen is praying daily that the Tunisians show us the way to real revolution.
Right, and it's amazing to me how people are celebrating, on the other hand,
yes.
Right? And that the leaders, in fact, are totally afraid and scared. And I think a lot of their tactics so far have been very superficial. There have been announcements that prices will not be risen, that they will take whatever small measures, to contain. There was a promise today from the Minister of Oil and Energy in Egypt, to employ actually anybody who had recently graduated, with a degree in oil and
in Egypt.
Right. In Egypt. So I feel that a lot of these governments are trying to contain, what a lot of people on the ground feel is an infectious thing. What happened in Tunisia is spectacular and unique in many, many ways, and I think that they're totally afraid of it.
Juan, you want to get in on this, react to any of that?
Sure. Well, of course, a dictator like Muammar Gaddafi in Libya would be very afraid of what has happened. I just do want to point out that actually, population-wise, Tunisia is similar, actually larger than Libya. Algeria is a much larger country, both geographically and population-wise. And the Algerian government, fought this civil war in the 90s and early zeros against the Islamic Salvation Front. And that's another thing that distinguishes Tunisia from some of its neighbors, and that the Muslim movements just haven't been as salient. Tunisia has a long tradition of leftist politics, of socialist policy, of women's liberation, And while it did have a significant Muslim movement in the 80s, the Nahda or Renaissance movement of Rashid Ghannouchi, the government was pretty effective in dismantling that, and it didn't seem to retain very much popular support. So, you know, in Algeria, the generals would be very afraid if something like this happened, that the Islamic Salvation Front would reemerge. We know bin Laden was supporting the more radical of that movement, which were called the Armed Islamic Group. And everybody remembers in the region what happened to the Shah's generals. You know, they used to show on the front page of the newspapers the Shah's former generals after the revolution in those slots in the morgue. And so I think that because there wasn't a big difference between the aspirations ideologically of Tunisians, the generals in Tunisia felt much more comfortable about backing off from Ben Ali.
And siding with the people. Taoufik, was WikiLeaks a factor here, in your opinion?
I don't think it was much of a factor. I think it basically confirmed what people knew all along. And actually the information that it contained is even a small drop into a much bigger bucket.
So why now?
Now is a very interesting question. I think that we all know that these governments, including Tunisia, are actually like pressure cookers. You know, something is going to give in. People have been saying this about Egypt, for example, for many years now, and we're just waiting for that moment to happen. I think what happened in Tunisia is that Bouazizi setting himself on fire triggered a chain of events, and people were really ready to take things on the street. I'm impressed by the amount of solidarity that people you know, have expressed or felt, and they're volunteering, they're out, they're feeding even the army, you know, out in the street.
Very briefly from each of the other two of you, why now?
You know, I'd like to talk about the role of social media. This was not a Twitter revolution, as some people have called it. This was a revolution spurred by the courageous people of Tunisia. But what social media did was it created a parallel cyber activism to the street activism. So although the media were controlled by Ben Ali, what you found was cyber activists putting information on Facebook, sending out information on blogs, using Twitter to tell protesters where snipers were located on rooftops. So you've got a generation of young people now in the Arab world who believe that I count and I can speak out after years of being oppressed, and that's crucial.
Even with government repression of speech, this social media communication was able to take place.
Right. Absolutely. I'll tell you one wonderful anecdote. The day before Ben Ali was toppled, hackers got into the account, the website of the Tunisian foreign minister, and posted a hoax resignation letter, apologizing to the Tunisian people. I mean, that is just beautifully subversive.
Well, the excitement that you're experiencing is contagious. Our viewers can see it. And so it's a great day when something like this can happen, and happen in this way anywhere in the world. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your excitement with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Next up, Figment.com, where young people share their writing from sonnets to cell phone novels. Stay with us.
Did you know CUNY leads the way for students with disabilities?
CUNY leads to my career as a healthcare professional.
CUNY leads to my career as an accountant.
CUNY leads to my career as a music teacher.
CUNY leads means linking employment, academics, and disability services. If you're a CUNY student with a visible or invisible disability, the City University of New York offers eligible students free career development and placement services.
Gain access to exciting employment opportunities through the power of a CUNY education.
As an employer, CUNY Leads provides me with a more qualified, diverse workforce.
Each campus has its own Leads counselor, a go-to person who knows you
and helps you enjoy every aspect of college life.
For more information and to find out if you qualify, visit cuny.edu/CUNYLeads. CUNY Leads to the career I always wanted.
To be a great dad is the most important job in a man's life, but it doesn't have to be hard. All it takes is a few minutes of your time, because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
If you think texting, friending, and poking are killing literature, think again. The founders of a website called Figment believe that young people still love to write and read, and they're providing an online forum for young writers to post their work and give and get feedback. Joining us now to take a look are Jacob Lewis, co-founder of the site, and two active contributors, New Yorker Victoria Testa and New Yorker Brendan Hutchinson. Joining us via Skype Brendan is in California, Victoria is here. Hi to all three of you.
Hi.
Thank you very much for coming on. Now, this all started when your co-founder, Dana Goodyear, wrote a story for The New Yorker about Japanese cell phone novels.
There was an amazing phenomenon that happened in the middle part of the last decade in which whole communities sort of sprang up around people reading, writing, and sharing novels on their cell phones. And it had a really profound effect on the way the publishing industry in Japan began to change. And we wanted to build something similar here, not to take the exact model, but to build a community for young people to read, write, share fiction, and really build it so that it could have this really profound effect on how publishing works in America.
When we say cell phone novel, does that mean it's very short, like a text message? It's not War and Peace, right?
No.
Or is it just a means of publishing something of any length?
I mean, for us, it can be anything. We give the community really just a blank sheet of paper and tell them that they can write whatever they want. That can be a short poem. It can be a multi-chaptered, 100,000-word novel. What happened in Japan was very short texting, sort of burst kind of language. But for us, I think that doesn't really apply. And I think people are really interested in testing out various forms of literature, both in what they read and in what they want to write.
But Figment does not really have to do with cell phones, right?
It doesn't. It works on cell phones, it works on computers, it works on anywhere you can get the web.
Yeah. Well, Victoria, give us an example of what you have written for this.
Oh, sure. This is a story called The Breakup Artist. It's not a cell phone novel. And, George Mercer sat across from me with his eyes wide beneath an inch of hard glass. He played with the straps of his backpack as if he was cracking a code. The iced coffee in front of him remained untouched. Beads of perspiration were dripping down the sides of the cup as rapidly as they flowed from George's forehead. His too tight pants hung painfully high on his stomach, and his shirt could use a good press. From here, it was easy to see why this was happening. "George," I whispered as not to startle him. "Yes," he answered with a squeak. "This isn't working out," I explained. "Something just isn't right, you know?" "No," he defended with more fire than I expected. "What isn't right?" "No chemistry," I stated. "Nothing in common. No conversation." George looked straight at me for a brief moment. His green eyes held pain and anxiety, slight embarrassment. Not that I cared. It wasn't my boyfriend I was breaking up with.
Nice.
Thanks.
Now I want to know what happens. But
Good
how did you find Figment? And what's the relationship between Figment and your writing?
Well, I heard about it through a friend, and I became a beta tester right away, and I just loved it ever since. And it's really great to get this awesome feedback on your writing, and it's great constructive criticism, and you get to meet this whole community of writers just like you.
Brendan, how about you?
Oh, well, I found out about it through the New York Times, and it just seemed like a really good idea. A writing community that targeted young writers, it just seemed perfect. And it's really helped me with my writing a lot, getting all this great feedback and everything, and working with this great community.
Now, I think we have some samples from Brendan's and Victoria's web pages that we can show. We'll see if we can get those up. And we are seeing Victoria Testa right now. Is this your Figment page, or is this from another site?
That's my Figment page.
Very nice. So, Jacob, you want to talk about why it looks like this?
Sure. One of the things we do is give people a place in which they can store all their writing and give some information about themselves. It's both a place where they can display their own work and also a place where they can find other people. So it both shows their activity level on the site, the things they've written, the reviews they've written, books they love, information about themselves. It becomes the kind of social portal by which they can begin to share with each other on the site.
Brendan, you're going to read something for us, right?
Sure, yeah. This is called Relative Happiness. Ever since he was small, he was different in that he wanted everyone to be happy. He didn't care about what enjoyment he got from other people's happiness, but only saw the result from their view. He was the first and last being to be utterly unselfish. In evolution's eyes, he was a fluke. Unfortunately for him, he lived in a near future where no one was really happy, partly because a recently developed virus had killed 3/4 of them, which coincidentally was considered quite progressive in evolution's eye, but mostly because everyone realized that nobody had ever really cared about anyone else at all. Once it was obvious that everyone was self-prevalent, humanity's progress shut down. Scientists gave up because they knew no one ever cared, and politicians resigned for the same reason. As for intimate relationships, those became endangered because each party was aware that the other was utterly and selfish. He was regarded in one of two ways by all, either a complete idiot or humanity's last hope.
Great, thank you. Jacob, there's a social media aspect of this too, right? It's not just that the work appears.
Yeah, I think we want to capitalize on the fact that that reading can be a kind of social endeavor as opposed to just a solitary one. So we allow people to follow along with stories, to comment and review on stories, to be participant in writing as it unfolds. It's a really important part for us so that it's not just about dumping something that you've written, but that everyone who's involved in a story, and that includes reader, reviewer, creator, is involved in the process from beginning to end.
You even have badges. How do people earn badges?
So people earn badges just by the amount of activity they do on the site, the number of stories they've read, the number of stories they've written, the number of chapters, how many hearts, the system by which people like each other is by giving each other a heart, how many hearts you've gotten on a story. And it allows for that participatory level to increase by doing anything on the site.
Is this easier than a in-person writing class? I know some of those in-person writing classes, when the work gets reviewed, your fellow students rip you to shreds. Does that happen here?
You know, it's not easier because you're still writing and you're putting your work out there, and you never know how people are going to respond to it. But so far, I've noticed that people are just, they're really supportive. They really, they want to help you, not hurt you or give you constructive criticism, but most of it's really positive and great, and it's awesome.
And Brendan, are you hoping to get famous from this, or is that beside the point?
Well, I think more the point is just to get good feedback on the writing, see what I need to improve on, see how I can just become a better writer, and it's really helped with that. I've gotten very constructive and helpful feedback.
So you think this is what school is going to be like in the future?
No, I hope so.
Jacob, go ahead. Jacob, here, go ahead.
I think it's an incredible resource for educational institutions, and that includes writing groups and schools and libraries. I think there's an amazing platform by which you can share and gain feedback in a much more efficient way than we can as we've been doing it.
All right. Read the work of our guests and others, and even some established writers, right?
Yeah, we try to include a lot of established writers and publishers' books. It really is about including the entire publishing environment on the site.
On Figment.com. Thanks to all of you.
Thanks.
And finally tonight, from the Wildlife Conservation Society, we are told this is the first ever high-quality video of a wild Asian elephant, an endangered species in Cambodia. And that's it for this week. See us anytime at brianlehrer.tv Next week, Queensborough President Helen Marshall, the dark side of the internet, and Brooklyn's love affair with vinyl records. Remember vinyl records? And tune into my daily radio show, 10 a.m. on WNYC Radio tomorrow morning, Understanding Your Credit Report. That's 10 a.m. on WNYC 93.9 FM and AM 820. Talk to you then.